Well, good morning, Dr. Woods. I just want to start with what we were talking about right before I hit the record button, right? Like this quote really took me, and I'd love to dive into it and share it with the audience. You said, I am in such a rapid stage of evolution that you are not the same person I chatted with just last week, much less yesterday. What does that mean for you?
Well, and I want to correct it's just it's a state.
Okay,
I'm not necessarily because I'm a scientist and I study stages of consciousness. I don't want to suggest that I'm moving from stage to stage day by day.
got it.
Um, States, the embodiment of different states do create stage shifts. But what I meant by that was I am a living example or case study of the work I do in the world and what I know and am coming to bring into form is that our limited conceptions of ourselves create the shadow, create the actual limitations of our human experience. Our existence is dependent upon how readily we can embrace a new version of ourselves. I've never said these things out loud, so I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. Yesterday I may not have been able to say these things, but I'm having new awarenesses now, almost daily, definitely weekly, because I'm exploring the edge of who we are and who we are becoming. I'm living a new reality regularly. I don't know about daily, but this new work that I'm bringing into form, it's not new in terms of it's never been done, but it's never been done in the way I'm doing it, rooted in purpose, resolving our unresolved shadow, our unconscious beliefs, our sense of limited self. So
Mhm.
when we resolve all of that and we are rooted in the truest alignment of who we are, then what is available to us, the expressions of us that are then ready to be embodied, emerge, and then we become that. It's, innovation and new products and new ways of being in the world, because we are different. We are now new beings that can become and express that experience. Um,
Well, I love this, right? I mean, this is just how we kind of started our conversation. Um, what, I mean, I think that's fascinating. You really hit something there. This idea of our limited view, our limited understanding of ourselves and of
mhm.
other humans. How, I guess my question, of course, is a very basic one. Like, how do we embrace these new states? How do we bring these to be? How do we gain better understanding of ourselves?
Well, I mean, and so that is my work in the world. I literally do have lots of methodologies, and I've been doing this for decades to create an awareness of our essential selves. What I began calling purpose decades ago.
Mhm.
That word has been co-opted in so many ways, no longer means what I mean it to. What's meaning for me is the essential version of us, our soul purpose, what our soul brought us here to do
Mhm.
in this incarnation. I help people find that, which then creates internal alignment. All your cells, your molecules, your atoms, your quarks are pointing in the same direction. And when you have that alignment, then you become internally coherent and you start living, you begin to experience yourself in a very different way than is typical as human. We have these constrained identities from childhood and from our social contexts and all the social forces that want us to be something other than who we truly are. But when you begin to know yourself truly, then um, then that version of you begins to be enlivened.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of tools, a lot of technologies now available. I'm not certainly not the only one that has them.
Mhm.
And you do this work, so it's based in lots of therapeutic and self-awareness and self-discovery models.
Mhm.
And then there are some deeper ways that are more um, transpersonal, coming to know ourselves as beyond this material self
Mhm.
that we are. I do lots of visualization and lots of coming to know your future self.
Well, I'm curious. You mentioned, I mean, you've been studying and discussing purpose and meaning for decades now. I know your doctorate is in behavior sciences and human and organizational development, correct? And you've
Hmm.
been working in that, as you said, for decades. What and now that the you're right, purpose has been co-opted in so many different ways in so many different areas. What does purpose mean to you?
um and actually I'm starting to not even use the word,
Mhm.
because its mainstream use has a different connotation. And maybe it's easier for me to just describe the distinctions. You
Sure.
know, when I began using it decades ago, nobody knew what I was talking about. Like, what in the world are you talking about, Holly? And what I meant was truly what our soul brought us here to do, the deepest, most essential, formed from essence version of ourselves that lives within us, that transcends time space. So our soul travels through time, through incarnations, and arrives in human form, regularly, in order to express itself and resolve whatever needs to be resolved, karmic or otherwise, in that lifetime, and have these expressions. And then over and over, that's been the human path,
Mhm.
really, to date. And so for me, purpose is a word that expresses that soul expression.
Mhm.
I believe that I believe, and what I've begun, I've witnessed in this lifetime, is that our soul has one purpose, one essential way of being, that's not a job, a career, a product, a business, a attachment to a United Nations goal to, resolve a climate crisis or whatever, um, which is the current common conception of purpose, is that, oh, I'm living my purpose, I have this great job and I do these things and they have meaning and I'm being fulfilled, and like, that is so awesome, and I'm so glad that humanity is arriving there, right? That finally we're beginning to see, oh, it's more than the paycheck and the profit and the role and the
Right.
title and the shoulds I'm supposed to become.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, I'm doing something that actually produces meaning internally, and that's great. That is an expression of purpose.
Mhm.
So, most we all do live on purpose, more or less. Our soul is always drawing us forward to have an experience that elicits a greater understanding of who we are.
Mhm.
And in that way, we are all always on purpose, because our soul can't help but bring us to those experiences. Some of them are experiences that feel positive, like I'm having a good outcome here, and some of them like, oh crap, like this isn't going well.
Mhm.
But it always elicits a greater awareness of who we are. We may hit our head on the wall dozens of times until we get it, and that's still purposeful.
Absolutely.
So
We talk about that so often that, what I hear you describing, hitting your head on the wall, is those failures in life, big failures, little failures, all of our
right,
failures, that we learn more about ourselves through failing, because at least
absolutely.
we've tried, we've strived, we've set a goal, we've attempted to achieve it, and maybe we fail, but then we learn from ourselves and that failure what to do differently. Now,
Yeah, absolutely.
what you just said is very consistent with my studies in logotherapy and existential analysis, that the
Mhm.
human being is mind, body, and spirit. You say soul. um and
I
that
can distinguish spirit and soul there, if you give me
absolutely, that
just a minute. So in my awareness, and I don't speak truth. It's just, this is what I've come to know through my own work and my own life, is spirit moves within us. It is the quantum field, and the cosmos. It is the all. And some people call it God, some people call it divine or sacred, or
Mhm.
whatever your conception of it is, the field. um, always moving, always available. Soul is the individuated expression of us as spirit, and we come to the earth in material human form, both as that individuated expression of soul and as spirit. So spirit is I am the whole, and soul is I am not, the Indra's web. I am not. I am both the collective, and I am a distinct individuated being who has a soul, unique expression. There's no, they're not at odds. I am both the all and an individuated expression of the all through my soul.
Wow. What an amazing description. That is beautiful. And I am curious, like, how did you, I know in previous conversations, a lot of how you've arrived here is through your studies, but also through your own personal trials. So I am
Yeah,
curious.
I would say it's more my personal trials and
Okay,
traumas. Um, I'll give you a nutshell version.
sure.
Um, and I'm gonna say with great humility, because I am just a portal, right? We're all just portals for that which wants to live through us. But as I've come to be aware, really the last 5-10 years, I get greater and greater insights into, my own ridiculous life and who we are as humans. But I think I came in some form of awakeness. I was very, very connected spiritually. And I mean, even the external reflections to me were that was true. And then I had a very challenging, traumatic childhood, family context, lots of abuse and neglect, mental health issues, and my mother. And I was shut down completely, like this, almost disembodied, dissociated for sure, until literally, I think, my 30s, when I began to, and I became, agnostic, atheistic, like there is no, don't believe, because life was so hard. And I didn't want to stay. I was depressed and suicidal, a good chunk of that. And finally, in my 30s, I don't know, I'd done enough therapy. Thank God for therapists, right? 35 years of therapy brought me back to some level of awareness and recognition and acceptance that I began to open up again. And in that opening, like rapid awarenesses, and started meditating deeply, and over time studying many world religions, I began to have this spiritual awareness, like, oh, okay, so much more than I ever had a cognition of. And then I started being connected again. The connections then just rapidly, I had all the psychic clairvoyance, cognizance, audience, and it just all started returning. And I started having very psychic transpersonal experiences and being guided. I was, I feel very fortunate to have been guided so much of that mid-adult to late adult journey. Not that it reduced the amount of trauma, I chose this life of massive experience of trauma in order to uncover and resolve the challenges that I came to this lifetime with, the karmic and lifetime patterns that needed to be cleared, resolved, in order for me to be more available, more pure, more open awareness to what wanted to come through me. And I've had friends who's like, Holly, I don't know why you're still alive, because that's a lot for a human to endure. Sorry, I don't know why.
No, that's okay.
Um, but I now view it with such gratitude, and grace, that the universe gave me these opportunities to be forced to go deep and clear all of the stuff that I've experienced in this lifetime, so that I can have these I feel truly one of the most blessed people on the planet.
I think
to
that's
have
an
had those
amazing,
experiences.
yeah, it's an amazing example. I mean, to look at your suffering and those trials and the trauma, my goodness, as a blessing, that's
Well,
amazing.
and so, obviously I came back as a bodhisattva. There's no doubt in my mind now that I came back in order to, to hold the collect, to some extent to hold the collective, and to be a living example of, we can get through this, because it's we're not done. This is going to be tough. There's no doubt in my mind that this experience of the last few years is kind of the beginning of what we're going to experience as humans.
Mhm.
And that the more we awaken to the work that we have to do internally, the easier, the faster, the more graceful it will go. Like if we can only embrace that which has to be cleared within us, the world is as we are, we will begin to clear the collective and its trauma, its residue of all of the suffering that we've experienced as humans. So the reason I feel blessed is two reasons. One is that, oh, thank God, I've already done most of the, what you might call the hard stuff. Like, I've
Mhm.
had enough of these experiences, like, oh yeah, I can do anything. Like, I'm resilient 12.0, right? Like, it's not gonna get any harder for me because I've already been doing it and nearly died so many times that, like, I don't have any fear of death. So, so I'm here, I'm available, and I can do this now. Um, and secondly, I feel blessed because I have found the joy and the bliss and the happiness and the love that's available on the other side of all that. And I now live that magical. I'm living in magic now. I've figured out how to create synchronicity, and that's what I want to teach. It's what I'm bringing into the world. So, like, of course I feel blessed, right? Like, why would I not feel blessed? It's
Right.
like arriving at the greatest party on the planet.
Well, and I think so many people get stuck in that trauma and don't move through it, stuck in that suffering, that they don't
Right.
get to that other side to find that blessing, to
Yes.
find that
Yes.
that great party you're talking about.
Yeah. And thank God, Dan, thank God for therapists. And um I do some of that work, but
Mhm.
mostly the people who come to me are like post therapy, like,
Mm.
like me. I literally did 35 years of therapy. Thank God I
Yeah.
had amazing support systems and
Well, let's
resources.
talk a little bit about the work you do, and I know your best-selling book, The Golden Thread, where to find purpose in the stages of your life, right? I really like that idea. You do work post therapy. Talk a little bit about the work you do.
Yeah. So most of the people who arrive to work with me have done a fair amount of personal spiritual development work. They have some sense of who they are. Um, they may have, they've probably done shadow work or deconstructed their limited beliefs, or, la la la.
Mhm.
Um, some of them for 10, 40 years. A lot of people have been in AA or ACA or NA, or,
Mhm.
like, there's so many modalities right now that
Right.
there's just lots of opportunity, or, many of them also simultaneously have therapists that are working with
Sure,
me.
sure.
And so we are able to go really deep
Mhm.
in uncovering the essence of who you are. um, and and then do some additional. I mean, there's some tools I've developed even just this year after an awakening experience in January, that, oh my God, the deepest core beliefs and the tendrils of their sub beliefs that, like, go into, past lives and versions of you that you didn't have access to before. and it and then we create literally alternate realities, visualizations of a different version of you that exists simultaneously. Some people call this parallel reality. I don't know
Mhm.
what I'm going to call it. Like, it's emergent. It's like, what do you call this stuff?
Right, right. Well,
um
it's that emerging evolution you were talking about earlier.
yeah,
As these
I
things
don't
are,
have names. Like,
yeah.
I do have a marketing person who's helping me with some words, but um it's the emergent self that's
Hmm.
it's coming alive, becoming enlivened in you.
Hmm.
um in material form simultaneously to what your current experience is, and then claiming it, grounding in it, becoming it, living as if it is true, and it becomes true, and then new products, new businesses, new careers, new offers, new ways of being, new relationships, all the things happen because your life is now it's almost, it's like a new life. To do that, you do have to have some stability of identity. I mean, you can speak to this, that many folks have very rigid identities that are not malleable and flexible. And so when I mean stability, I don't mean concrete, like rigid. I mean, like, I have an awareness of self enough that I can, I am agile, I can shift, and I can try on new things and experiment, not only with what I bring into the world, but with who I am. And so there's a lot of experimentation, and, safe to learn, safe to fail. It's also, you see my vulnerability, like, I don't know who I'm going to be tomorrow. And I fail all the time. I have lots of failures, many.
Yeah, it's fascinating how
Like,
often
oh
that
well.
comes up. Yeah, it's fascinating how often that comes up with people I talk to, that those that are often the most integrated, the most happy, and lead the most meaningful lives are those that have failed and
Yeah.
have integrated those failures in a very positive way.
Well, and that's the feedback loop. I mean, some to extent, I've written an article about key purpose indicators. We had our sensory apparatus, our all our senses, and then the energetic and psychic and mental, cognitive, emotional apparatus that we have is really it's a built-in intrinsic feedback loop, right? And so as we move forward in the world, we become more and more of ourselves. We use those apparati, those antennae, if you want to call them, as means to gauge whether we're on target or not. And so some of the work I do is also about really listening deeply, paying attention to the moment by no moment shifts in you as you're in the world, having an experience. Like, how does that feel? What occurs for you in all those ways that helps us to stay aligned. I mean, I get out of alignment too. Like, I do stupid stuff, and like, oh no, that didn't work. That felt horrible. Not doing that again. And so we learn and calibrate. We learn to calibrate in the moment. When I think a thought, sometimes, like, no, that thought is going to guide me someplace else. How do I reframe that? And so reframing is a lot of what I do as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's such a great statement, right? So often people are trapped in believing they are their thoughts, and that thought cannot be changed. I mean, very often that's the basis of anxiety and depression, that, oh,
Right.
I have to be these thoughts. And what you just illustrated was the opposite of that. We can change those. We don't have to be
Yes.
our thoughts.
Yeah. Well, our thoughts thoughts are generated by our somatic experience of the world around us, and we have these patterns of interpretation. So something happens externally, and then we have a somatic and energetic experience of it, and then our patterned response kicks in. Oh, that must be, and I am, and then a thought is created, right? As opposed to, that thing happened, fascinating, interesting, I don't have to have any reaction to it. I'm great.
And going back to that idea of failure, that failure does not have to dictate who we are. We can change the failure. We can change our thoughts to become, well, in your examples, better, different, more. I think, I was looking for the hows, how do we do these things? And I think something you said earlier really struck me. It's just being open.
Well, that's certainly foundational.
Mm-hmm.
Spaciousness, creating space is something I teach as foundational to doing any of this work. And that means I'm working through it's both foundational and a part of the process. So just having an awareness, a cognizance that I'm trying to create space inside of me, and which means my interpretations, my limiting beliefs, my thoughts, my energetic response to the world, my emotional response to the world, all those things are things that we, need to become more aware of and recreate pattern, create new neural grooves so that all those experiences can shift. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you say creating space within yourself,
Mhm.
how does one do that?
Um, oh, so many ways. And, obviously some of the earliest forms of creating space that are, a part of mindfulness, which is I think mindfulness is such a wonderful phase. It's like an experience that has been introduced to humanity, which creates a stillness and a reflection, a reflective space, an opportunity to just witness and notice what is happening within and around us. So mindfulness and all its practices, including meditation and breath work and movement, all the different forms of mindfulness that now can be easily accessed, is a great way to start. I also believe that as you really truly become mindful, then, which is a initial stage, um, and then moving into how do I create space in my environment, in my relationships, in my communication, and there are many different forms of creating openings that allow you to be more present in everything you do. I've studied nonviolent communication for decades and have taught it in many forms, and that is a great start. And there's a way to add space to NVC, right? So taking the time to listen at many levels creates more space than just hearing your words. I can witness you somatically. I can hear your words. I can feel you energetically. I can witness myself in response to you. I mean, and so when I slow everything down and notice the whole, the totality of who you and I are in relationship, this reciprocal dynamic, there's a whole nother way that we are communicating that's beyond the words, that tells me more about what's going on between us. So that's just an example. I think when we begin to interact with the world in that way, we gain so much more. We have access to lots of things, and that's kind of what I mean by space. Is I'm allowing so much more to come into my awareness and use that as data. I'm a scientist, so I'm always like,
Right.
give me more data.
Right. Well, that's such a great point. We take in data as human beings in such a variety of ways, but we often cut ourselves off from all those ways, especially in communication with others, that we miss so much.
Yeah.
Wow.
I so appreciate your questions, Dan. This is so fun.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm curious. I mean, the Golden Thread, I just started. It is a fascinating book. I don't want to, we can spend all day talking about it. What are a few key components to that you would want to share?
Well, so the premise behind the book and this work is that as we started, our soul has brought us here for a purpose, to accomplish a set of tasks or commitments that we made. Excuse me. And if you look at retrospectively at your life, which I do with clients, you can see this thread that is your soul nudging you, pushing you, encouraging you, inviting you, enrolling you in ways that are demonstrating the version of this in this lifetime, what your soul is wanting you to accomplish. And because I raised 4 kids, my own 2 children and 2 stepchildren, and then and witnessing my own life and witness my clients, I had this organic unfolding awareness of the thread of our lifetime. And I literally saw the thread in a client one day, like, what is that? And so you can witness for your own life what that looks like, which helps you to discern what is the message of your soul, what is your soul trying to get you to do, and what is the next expression of your soul in this lifetime. I actually have a free audio course on my website that helps guide people through some initial awareness of their golden thread, just as an offer for anybody that wants to take advantage of that. And so the thread literally hides from us because so much of it is not, it doesn't come out as a gift, and there's the shadow in the gift, and we want to deny and repress and ignore the parts of our life that were painful or hard or challenging. Oh, that's that just happened to me. And we lose then the merit or the value of those experiences, because they are, come in as shadow, and yet they're also teaching us really important things. And so most of us don't see that thread, the purpose of who we are, because we tend to deny all of that, right? Oh, it just happened to me. That's not really me. That's not where I'm going. And so I help people see that the actual traumas and the painful experiences of their life are as important and significant, and are just the shadow side of this two-sided coin that is the gift and the shadow. And we have to count it all. And that's why I talk about my traumas as blessings, because it taught me so much about who I am, and helped me to sharpen the saw, or polish the gem, however you want to think about it, of who I'm intended to become.
I think for me, for those
just
long
one more. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Absolutely.
Well, I was going to say one more quick piece is that we often don't see our purpose because it looks different in different stages of our life. My doctorate in human development, I have a sense of what it is we're attempting to accomplish at each stage, these developmental tasks. And so the purpose looks different in childhood and adolescence and adulthood, because we're literally trying to build our capacities as humans in each stage of life. And so, like, what I did as a child is so unrelated to what I'm doing as an adult, but it's not unrelated. It's usually one and the same, just a different expression.
Now, that is fascinating, because as a behavior scientist studying development, right, there are different theories say there are different stages that have rules and expectations around them, but does our purpose fit with those rules, or is it unique in each stage for different people?
Well, okay, so again, my belief, my awareness is that our soul brings us here on purpose for reasons that are common throughout the life. We have one purpose, if you want to call it that. I am an essential being who has these things to accomplish, and it's going to look like many expressions over the stage of my life, and even when I get many expressions simultaneously. So one of the facets of my purpose, and my purpose, is to speak powerful truth, to shine love onto shadow, to liberate soul's potential, reunite love and power. So I literally came to help people liberate their soul and reunite love and power, because I know that when we've accomplished that, the love that, the cosmic impulse really is just love. And when we become embodied, we are powerful beings expressing that love. So as the most evolved, enlightened, awake, aware, embodied version of us, we're just love and power. And so speaking powerful truth was, a facet that I it was the first facet I began to trace, and like, oh my God, I was doing that at 3. And wasn't always doing it well. I didn't always show up speaking truths in ways that were useful or productive. And so I had to learn to develop that capacity in order to be more useful and functional and serve others. And so I became at one point in my adulthood, I became a mediator because I needed to learn to speak in a way that was honoring and respecting and, of service. Didn't
That is
always do
amazing, and
that.
what a way to do it too, by putting yourself in those conflicted situations to mediate.
Oh
You're
yeah.
certainly going to learn that. Yeah, absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
you've mentioned shadow and shadow work many times, and for those who are listening that don't understand that, you're referring to the Jungian concept, correct?
Right.
Okay,
And,
and probably
in
more.
its expanded conception
Hmm.
is that it's anything we don't see, we're unconscious to it. It's the simplest way
Yeah.
to think about it is when we don't know ourselves well and know the things that are limiting us because they're part of our subconscious, unconscious beingness, they're in the shadow. And yeah, Jung certainly did inform, and really initiate the field.
Hmm.
And so much has evolved from there. I have studied, and a lot of what I do is in that form, not all of it. But it's just whatever we're not aware of in ourselves. And there's no end to it. It's not like, oh, I've done my shadow work and now I'm done and ready to be in the world. It's like, sorry.
Now I have complete
Now
awareness of myself forever. Yeah.
decades into this, like, oh, I thought I was going to be done at some point, and nope, always another layer. I just this year had like some of the most devastating, uncovering release of shadow, huge grief, um, and like simultaneously the most amazing awarenesses of what was, I didn't have access to before, and like, oh my God, I'm so grateful to now have an awareness and begun to resolve those things. um
I love that idea. I mean, you're such a brilliant example, right? A vibrant example of taking our suffering and turning it into something so positive. To see, I mean, to be able to say, my suffering has been a blessing. Wow, that is incredibly powerful. Dr. Hollywoods, you are amazing. This was such a fun conversation. I hope we can do it again as you
yeah.
continue to emerge. Where can people find out more about you, or choose to work
Thank
with you,
you.
or to download your
Yeah.
free course to do a little bit of
Thanks, Dan.
self
Yeah.
work?
So I am emergenceinstitute.net. Emergence, not emergency or emergent. Probably not a great branding name, but my website was hacked shortly after I published my book, and I had to go somewhere, and I just keep emerging. So that's what I named my business, emergenceinstitute.net. You can email me, Holly at emergenceinstitute.net. Or on my website, there's a page called Get Started,
Hmm.
and there's several things you can download, including the free course.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I would,
Yeah.
and on my website, I also have a link for a free discovery call if you're interested. So happy to do
Absolutely.
that.
I will put that in the show notes. And for those of you that are interested, I would certainly take a look at the golden thread. I know it's certainly been an enlightening beginning to the read. I can't wait to dive deeper into it. So thank you
Thanks,
so
Dan.
much for your time
Thank
today,
you.
Holly. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
All right.